Johnny Carson's last words to his favorite guests, the man behind the desk. For 30 years, Johnny Carson invited America into their living rooms 5 nights a week as the host of The Tonight Show. With his perfect timing, nice charm from the Midwest, and his famous golf swing, he became more than just a TV host. He became the country's friend through 3 decades of changing times. But while millions felt they knew Johnny Carson, the man himself stayed very private. He kept a careful distance between his TV personality and his very private personal life. Carson was famous for not showing his emotions, rarely letting viewers see behind the carefully built front of the perfect professional. Johnny created a character called Johnny Carson that he played on television, explained former Tonight Show producer Fred Cordova before he died. The real man was much more complicated, thoughtful, sometimes sad, and very picky about who he let into his close circle of friends. This pickiness also applied to Carson's work relationships. Out of about 22,000 guests who came on his show during its famous run, only a few earned Carson's real respect and trust. These rare people managed to connect with the real man behind the desk, forming friendships that went beyond the usual host and guest relationship. There were guests, and then there were Johnny's guests, remembered a longtime Tonight Show writer. The difference was obvious to anyone who worked on the show. With most celebrities, he was always professional but kept some distance. But with his favorites, something changed. His posture, how much he paid attention, the light in his eyes. He was truly there with them. Some of these conversations were public, saved forever on broadcast television. Others happened backstage away from the cameras, shared later by people who were there. Together they create a more complete picture of a man who, despite being on TV every night in America's living rooms, stayed mysterious throughout his career and after. The final conversations. And tomorrow night, 50 years later, NBC will broadcast Bob Hope's Christmas Cheer from Saudi Arabia. It airs at 9:30. Would you welcome Mr. Bob Hope? Number 9. Bob Hope. Respect with some doubts. Bob Hope represented an older generation of comedy. The vaudeville-trained performer whose overseas USO shows and super-fast joke delivery had made him an American legend. Carson, who grew up watching Hope, always treated him with the public respect due to a comedy pioneer. Yet behind the scenes, their relationship was more complicated. As Hope got older and his performances became more and more dependent on cue cards and pre-written material, Carson reportedly found their segments harder and harder to handle. Johnny respected Hope's legacy enormously, explained a Tonight Show staff member who worked closely with both men. But privately he felt Hope's style had become outdated, too stiff, and rehearsed for the more conversational approach Johnny had pioneered. Despite these private concerns, Carson always maintained perfect professional politeness whenever Hope appeared on the show. During Hope's final Tonight Show appearance, viewers saw only Carson's public respect for the comedy legend, never the private worries. According to staff members who were there after that final appearance, Carson approached Hope backstage and reportedly said, "Thanks for everything. Bob, you never missed ever." This moment, shared by a stagehand who witnessed it, captured Carson's complicated relationship with Hope, real respect for the comedian's professionalism and historical importance, despite their different approaches to comedy. That comment was pure Johnny, noted the staff member. He was acknowledging Hope's legendary preparation and reliability. The fact that in decades of performances, Hope always delivered exactly what he promised. Johnny valued that professionalism, even if he personally preferred a more spontaneous approach. This ability to separate personal preference from professional respect was a trademark of Carson's character, and explains why, despite their style differences, Hope remained a welcome presence on The Tonight Show throughout Carson's time as host. "He's one of my favorite entertainers in all of show business. Would you welcome Dean Martin?" Number 8. Dean Martin, celebrating the effortless cool. Few guests brought out Carson's playful side more reliably than Dean Martin. With his seemingly effortless charm and carefully created happy drunk act, Martin represented a particular brand of old-school cool that Carson clearly admired. Martin's appearances were known for being unpredictable, which Carson, famous for his tightly controlled show, seemed to genuinely enjoy. Whether Martin was deliberately missing his chair, pretending to forget questions mid-answer, or playfully messing up planned segments. He created moments of surprise that delighted both the audience and Carson himself. According to those who worked on the show, Carson appreciated how Martin never took the talk show format too seriously. A refreshing contrast to guests who arrived with carefully rehearsed stories and talking points. During what would be Martin's final appearance on The Tonight Show, the two men shared a typically playful exchange. As Martin prepared to leave the stage, Carson reportedly said, "Don't change, Dino. The world needs at least one guy who never takes it seriously." While this exact wording isn't captured in broadcast archives, several crew members recalled the feeling of Carson's farewell. The comment reflected Carson's appreciation for Martin's refusal to be tied down by show business rules, a quality Carson himself may have envied, given the limits of his nightly hosting duties. Johnny once told me that Dean was the one guest who always made him wish the show ran longer, recalled a producer who worked on The Tonight Show during this time. That was extraordinary coming from Johnny, who normally watched the clock like a hawk. This mutual appreciation created a comfort level between the two men that translated into television gold, allowing viewers to see a more relaxed, spontaneous Carson than appeared with most other guests. I have great admiration of had for many, many years for this gentleman and a special visitor to the night show. Would you welcome Mr. George Burns? Number 7. George Burns. Honoring the elder statesman. George Burns represented a living connection to vaudeville and early American comedy, a link to entertainment history that Carson, a student of comedy, deeply respected. Burns continued appearing on The Tonight Show well into his 90s, and Carson always treated these visits with special respect. Johnny viewed George as comedy royalty, explained a writer who worked on the show during this time. He would actually prepare differently for Burns' appearances, doing more research, thinking more carefully about questions. He approached those segments almost as a student rather than just a host. Burns famously said in his autobiography, "If Johnny Carson likes you, you're bulletproof," acknowledging the power Carson had in the entertainment industry. For his part, Carson showed his appreciation for Burns through both his on-air treatment and private comments to staff. During what would be Burns' final appearance on The Tonight Show, Carson said on air, "George, you're the only guy I know who gets funnier every year." This comment, saved in broadcast archives, reflected Carson's genuine admiration for Burns' longevity and continued energy as a performer. According to staff members, Carson later said that Burns made him believe that age was just another punchline, an attitude that likely appealed to Carson, who was always aware of the generational changes in comedy and his own place within that evolution. Johnny loved that George kept changing his act, noted a Tonight Show director. He wasn't just recycling old material or coasting on his legend status. He was still creating, still finding new ways to connect with audiences. Johnny respected that commitment to the craft. Burns's appearances offered Carson something increasingly rare, as his time on The Tonight Show extended the opportunity to be the student rather than the master, learning from someone who had been performing since Carson was a child. Cannot say enough things about Lucille Ball. She is quite simply a true artist. And I think one of the great tests of comedy is how well it stands up. Number 6. Lucille Ball. Television royalty meets television royalty. When Lucille Ball appeared on The Tonight Show, it represented the meeting of two television pioneers, the woman who had revolutionized the sitcom and the man who had redefined late-night television. Their mutual respect was obvious in every interaction with Carson, treating Ball with a respect he saved for very few guests. Johnny viewed Lucy as an equal, one of the only performers he seemed to see that way. Observed a camera operator who worked on several of Ball's appearances. There was a different energy when they were together, almost like watching colleagues rather than a host and guest. Their final on-air appearance together featured warm conversation and visible mutual admiration. What viewers didn't see, according to those present backstage, was Carson's more personal expression of appreciation after the cameras stopped rolling. According to a staff member who was present, Carson approached Ball backstage and said simply, "You're the real deal, Lucy. Always were." While this exact wording comes from backstage memories rather than recorded footage, multiple Tonight Show employees confirmed that Carson expressed similar feelings to Ball privately, acknowledging her groundbreaking contributions to television and her legendary work ethic. When Ball died in 1989, Carson did something he rarely did for any celebrity. He devoted a segment of The Tonight Show to a heartfelt tribute, temporarily setting aside his usual emotional restraint to acknowledge her passing. Lucy's death hit him hard, recalled a producer who worked on that episode. Johnny usually kept his personal feelings off the air, but with Lucy, he made an exception. That alone tells you how much she meant to him. This willingness to publicly acknowledge his admiration for Ball represented a rare break in Carson's carefully maintained emotional boundaries, a testament to the genuine connection between two performers who had each transformed their respective corners of the television landscape. He is a legend in his own time, and it sounds corny, but it's true. And he has returned from England, and where he's added a few more chapters to that legend. Would you welcome, please, Jack Benny? Number 5. Jack Benny, the master of timing. If there was one comedian whose influence on Carson's own performance style was most obvious, it was definitely Jack Benny. Benny's perfect timing, his masterful use of the pause, and his willingness to be the target of the joke rather than the one telling it all, found echoes in Carson's approach to hosting The Tonight Show. Carson never hid his admiration for Benny, often naming him as a primary influence and treating his appearances on the show with special respect. During these segments, viewers saw a side of Carson rarely shown with other guests, the appreciative student paying respect to a respected teacher. Johnny would actually defer to Jack in a way I never saw with anyone else, recalled a director who worked on several of Benny's Tonight Show appearances. He would set up situations for Jack to shine, then just sit back and enjoy the master at work. It was a complete reversal of his usual approach to controlling the show's rhythm. According to colleagues who were close to Carson, after what would be Benny's final appearance on The Tonight Show, Carson reportedly told him privately, "You taught me how to listen." While this specific wording comes from second-hand accounts rather than documented exchanges, it aligns perfectly with Carson's public statements about what he had learned from studying Benny's performances, particularly the power of the reactive pause rather than the aggressive punchline. Johnny often said that Benny taught him that the pause is funnier than the punchline, confirmed a longtime friend of Carson's. He studied Jack's timing obsessively early in his career, analyzing how he could build anticipation and turn silence into comedy gold. This technical appreciation evolved into genuine personal admiration, with Carson viewing Benny not just as a skilled performer, but as comedy royalty who had helped shape his own approach to entertainment. I wish I had not said them. Dumb Indian. One was a number 4. Burt Reynolds, the perfect prankster. Few guests brought out Johnny Carson's playful, mischievous side as consistently as Burt Reynolds. Their legendary on-air friendship, characterized by practical jokes, surprise water fights, and unscripted conversation, created some of The Tonight Show's most memorable and genuinely spontaneous moments. Burt gets the game, Carson reportedly told a producer after a particularly memorable appearance by the mustachioed movie star. Most guests don't. This game was the delicate balance between entertainment and authenticity that Carson strived for, but rarely achieved with celebrity guests. Reynolds understood instinctively that the best television came not from carefully rehearsed stories, but from genuine moments of surprise and connection. Their playful rivalry began when Reynolds spontaneously hit Carson in the face with a can of shaving cream during what was supposed to be a straightforward interview. Rather than being annoyed by this disruption to his carefully controlled show, Carson was delighted, and a legendary television friendship was born. During what would be Reynolds' final appearance on Carson's Tonight Show, the host reportedly said on air, "Don't ever stop coming back. Burt, I need someone to keep me honest." According to staff members who worked on the show, Carson valued Reynolds for his willingness to break the artificial nature of celebrity interviews, to introduce an element of unpredictability into the normally structured format of late-night television. Johnny respected that Burt never took himself too seriously, explained a Tonight Show writer. In an industry full of carefully managed images and egos, Reynolds was willing to be the target of jokes, to look foolish, to put entertainment over vanity. Carson found that incredibly refreshing. This appreciation for Reynolds's authentic approach extended beyond their on-screen chemistry. According to those who knew Carson well, he often cited Reynolds as one of the only guests who could catch him off guard in a good way, creating genuine reactions rather than the practiced responses he delivered to most interview subjects. But this lady, she's one of the most talented performers I think has ever come along in the entertainment business. Number 3, Carol Burnett, the guest who brought sunshine. Carol Burnett held a special place in Carson's professional universe. A performer whose natural warmth, quick wit, and complete lack of pretension made her welcome presence on The Tonight Show throughout his time as host. Unlike many guests who approached their appearances as promotional opportunities, Burnett seemed genuinely invested in creating entertaining television. "Carol brings sunshine to the stage," Carson reportedly told Ed McMahon after one of Burnett's many appearances. What distinguished Burnett from most other guests was Carson's willingness to give up control of his carefully orchestrated show whenever she appeared. He would let her segments run long, allow her to interact directly with the audience, a privilege normally reserved for Carson alone, and even permitted her to take over portions of the show on occasion. "Johnny trusted Carol completely," noted a former producer. He knew she understood television timing as well as he did, that she would never embarrass him or the show, and most importantly, that whatever spontaneous direction she took would be entertaining. This trust was evident in the freedom Carson gave Burnett during her appearances, a stark contrast to his typically tight management of the show's format and pacing. According to staff members, Carson would sometimes say backstage before her segments, "Just let Carol do whatever she wants. She never disappoints." After what would be her final appearance on Carson's Tonight Show, colleagues recalled that he told her backstage, "If I could build a show around just one person, it would be you." While this specific wording comes from staff memories rather than recorded footage, the feeling aligns perfectly with Carson's public treatment of Burnett and his frequent praise of her talents both on and off camera. What Johnny appreciated most about Carol was her genuine joy in performing, explained a Tonight Show director who worked on many of Burnett's appearances. "She wasn't there to promote something or build her brand. She was there to create something fun with Johnny, a true collaboration rather than just an interview." This collaborative spirit created a visible change in Carson whenever Burnett appeared, a relaxation of his normal professional boundaries, and a willingness to follow wherever she led the conversation. Understand what they're doing is strange, right? It's when people don't understand. Number 2, Bob Newhart, the master of understatement. Bob Newhart and Johnny Carson shared a comedy style that created an immediate friendship. Both men specialized in understatement, perfect timing, and the ability to find humor in life's ordinary moments without resorting to loud comedy or excessive energy. "Johnny once called Bob the most effortlessly funny man I know," recalled a writer who worked closely with Carson. That was probably the highest compliment Johnny could give, because effortlessness was what he himself tried for every night. What made Newhart's appearances special was the visible relaxation in Carson's behavior, a sense that he was talking with a kindred spirit rather than performing an interview. Their shared Midwestern sensibilities and similar approaches to comedy created a natural rhythm that required no effort or management from either man. Watching Johnny with Bob was like seeing two jazz musicians who instinctively knew when to play and when to lay back, observed a Tonight Show director. Their timing was so complementary, neither one trying to dominate, both enhancing the other's performance. This professional appreciation evolved into genuine friendship, with the two men occasionally playing golf together, a rare inclusion into Carson's closely guarded private life that few celebrities ever experienced. According to those close to Carson, after what would be Newhart's final appearance on The Tonight Show, Carson privately told him, "Nobody made it look easier, but I know how hard you worked." While this specific exchange isn't documented on camera, colleagues confirmed that Carson expressed similar feelings to Newhart over the years, a recognition of the careful craft that went into Newhart's seemingly effortless comedy, something Carson understood intimately from his own experience. Johnny saw himself in Bob in many ways, explained a producer who worked with both men. They both created humor through precision rather than volume, through timing rather than dramatics. And they both made it look simple despite the enormous skill involved. This mutual understanding created a comfort level between the two men that translated into some of The Tonight Show's most natural and engaging conversations. Exchanges that felt less like interviews and more like listening in on two masters discussing their craft. "You deny that after yesterday it's all over. I mean, this is it." No, that's right. "Yes, I was the head cheerleader." Number 1, Jimmy Stewart. The moment that broke the facade. Of all the thousands of celebrity interactions that occurred on The Tonight Show during Carson's 3 decades as host, one stands above all others for its emotional impact and the rare glimpse it offered into Carson's closely guarded heart. In 1981, Jimmy Stewart appeared on the show, and with Carson's encouragement, read a poem he had written about his beloved dog, Bo, who had recently died. The simple, heartfelt verses about his golden retriever's quirks and the empty space left by his passing created one of television's most genuine moments. As Stewart finished reading, Carson, famous for his emotional restraint, was visibly moved, briefly tearing up on camera before simply saying, "Thank you for sharing that, Jimmy." This moment, still available in broadcast archives, represents one of the only times Carson allowed himself to display genuine vulnerability on national television. For a man who built his career on cool professionalism and emotional control, this brief crack in the facade was extraordinary. According to several staff members who were present after the cameras stopped rolling, Carson approached Stewart backstage, embraced him, and said, "I'll never forget that. You just gave us something real." While the exact wording of this backstage exchange relies on staff memories rather than recorded footage, the on-air moment itself remains one of the most authentic, emotional exchanges ever broadcast on The Tonight Show. That night changed something in Johnny's approach to the show, reflected a producer who worked with Carson for many years. He realized that allowing genuine emotion carefully, selectively, could create more powerful television than perfect control ever could. It didn't make him suddenly become emotional on air regularly, but it opened a door he had previously kept firmly closed. Stewart, with his own Midwestern restraint and genuine humility, had managed to connect with Carson on a level few others ever reached, creating a moment of shared humanity that transcended the typical host-guest dynamic and revealed the man behind the carefully constructed persona. The legacy of connection. What these 9 final exchanges reveal isn't just Carson's personal preferences or private relationships, but something more fundamental about the man himself, his deeply held values, his professional philosophy, and what he truly respected in others beyond fame or popularity. Carson admired craftsmanship, the technical mastery demonstrated by performers like Jack Benny and Bob Newhart, whose seemingly effortless humor represented years of careful refinement. He valued authenticity, the genuine warmth of Burnett, the unvarnished emotionality of Jimmy Stewart, and he appreciated those who, like Burt Reynolds and Dean Martin, understood that entertainment should never be subordinated to ego. Johnny's favorite guests were the ones who shared his fundamental values about what made good television, explained a longtime producer. He respected performers who took their work seriously without taking themselves too seriously. People who understood that connection with the audience mattered more than personal promotion. These relationships also offered rare glimpses behind Carson's famous reserve moments when the perfect professional allowed himself to be simply a man, expressing genuine appreciation for people who had touched his life in meaningful ways. For someone as private as Johnny, these connections were significant. Noted a friend who knew Carson well. He didn't let many people in, personally or professionally. The ones who made it through that barrier had earned something truly rare. As viewers, these moments allowed us fleeting glimpses of the real person behind the iconic television personality. The man whose intelligence, taste, and fundamental decency helped shape American entertainment for 3 decades while remaining something of a mystery himself. Perhaps Carson's greatest gift wasn't just his perfect timing or his unmatched interviewing skills, but his selective vulnerability, his willingness to occasionally let us see past the polished performance to the genuine human connection beneath. In those rare moments, like his visible emotion during Stewart's poem, we weren't just watching a talk show host. We were witnessing something authentic and unscripted. A real person responding to another real person. These weren't just famous faces. They were the people who made Johnny Carson lower his guard and open his heart. And in those final moments with each, we caught glimpses of the real man behind the desk.